Excellencies, ministers, honoured officials from the multilateral agencies, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this, the third session of the Global Small Island Developing States Leaders, also known as SIDS. My name is Juliet Foster, and over the next 90 minutes, I shall be guiding you through what I believe will be a lively and thought-provoking debate on SIDS and technologies of communication and information. The organisers of GSL are grateful for the very kind sponsorship of Bayer in supporting these debates at transnational level. So thank you so much for your support. Let's now focus on the topic in hand. It's fair to say that the growth of technology has been nothing short of extraordinary, and that staggering rate of advance is showing few signs of slowing down. If you want to know just how staggering it is, then I'm about to dazzle you with some figures. By 2025, some 38.6 billion smart devices around the world will be collecting, analysing and sharing data. The web hosting services market is poised to generate over $77 billion. And currently, 4.66 billion of us around the world are internet users, although I suspect that figure has gone up since I first wrote it down. So what does that mean for small island states? Well, these states are among the beneficiaries of what futurologists have dubbed the fourth industrial revolution. Information communication technology is expected to mitigate some of the challenges that SIDS typically face because of their geographical remoteness, especially by facilitating access to product and service suppliers. The bottom line is that ICD is the foundation enabling SIDS to diversify their economies, boost their manufacturing output, obtain greater access to global supply and value chains, and improve their disaster preparedness, points that were highlighted in the 2014 Samoa SIDS Pathway UN report. Well, 7 years on from that historic publication, SIDS are continuing to make big, important strides in terms of the affordability and universality of their ICT networks. Mobile broadband coverage across the SIDS now covers 85% of the population, while the price of 500 megabits of mobile data has dropped from 15% of gross national income per capita to 8%. At the same time, the percentage of individuals living and working on these islands using the internet has risen to 56% between 2014 and 2018. So this is essentially a good news story, except the progress does conceal many challenges for small islands. Research points to ICT skills shortages, making it difficult to derive benefits from increasing upstream technology. There's also the issue of take-up. In the small island of Cabo Verde, just off the African continent, for example, around half of the population not using the internet said the most important reason why they didn't take it up was because they didn't know how to use it. Not to be forgotten in this debate is the continuing gender challenge in digital employment in some SIDS. In other words, how can we do more to back up the development of women in technology and digital entrepreneurship? So if you could, panel, I would like you to hold those thoughts because we are going to explore each of them with the help of our distinguished panel, of course, who've been drawn from the small islands themselves and, of course, experts from the UN family of organisations. They will each give a 5-minute speech outlining their position. And can I stress it has to be 5 minutes as we do have quite a lot of ground to cover in the time that we are together. And after those 5-minute presentations, I will ask each of you a question, and there will be more general questions towards the end of the session. I would like to invite to the floor His Excellency Jean-Paul Carteron, who is Ambassador of the Solomon Islands to UNESCO and the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Ambassador Carteron is the co-founder of the GSL initiative with his colleague, Ambassador David Doyle. Donc, Monsieur Ambassadeur Carteron, bienvenue à cet environnement et la parole est maintenant à vous.
Thank you, Juliette. Thank you to David. Thanks to him, we started with this GSL initiative and it is expanding now month after month. We have two main partners who are Seychelles, with the support of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Radegonde of Seychelles. We have also Dominican Republic with the support of Mario Arvelo, who is the ambassador of Dominican Republic to FAO. And we are expecting in the next week to come a number of other delegations, other governments joining us in order to implement this new concept of transversal diplomacy that we wish for the future in order to address concretely the main issues related to small islands. I would like to thank Bayer. Bayer, we saw a beautiful movie of presentation. Bayer is supporting us, and I welcome Natasha Santos. Natasha is a brilliant and respected woman, highly qualified, and her activity at Bayer Crop Science Division as Vice President and Head of Stakeholder Strategy and Affairs is key for addressing issues of agriculture, food, and food security. She will speak about a very special issue, which is digital tools which are transforming agriculture and improving the life of millions of persons, improving or being in position of improving if we develop them. We will have also, and I would like just to say in a few words who are our guests. I thank all of them for accepting to participate in this debate. Angel Miguel Moratinos. Moratinos is the United Nations Under Secretary General, holding the post of High Representative for the United Nations Alliance of Civilization. If you did not have the opportunity to verify the activities of the United Nations Alliance of Civilization, I would suggest that you inform yourself, because it's a very, very key and important initiative of United Nations. He was Spanish Minister of Foreign Affairs and very respected EU Special Representative for the Middle East peace process. He worked a lot in the Middle East, and it would be useless to introduce Mr. Moratinos. Mr. Courtenay Rattray is the United Nations High Representative for the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states. Thank you, Mr. Rattray. You are the person in charge of all these issues in New York. And I know that when you were ambassador of Jamaica to United Nations, you already served as co-chair of the group of friends of the Sustainable Development Goals financing. Peter Kenny-Laurea, co-president of the ACP-EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly. Mr. Kenny-Laurea is MP in Solomon Islands. He is actually, for him, it is midnight. Thank you to be with us. It's late. You served as an international civil servant in the United Nations Secretariat in New York, and as permanent secretary of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Honiara. Altai Sengizer, with a recording contribution because at the last moment he could not make it, is president of the General Conference of UNESCO, actually, and he will chair this conference in a few weeks when we open it. Malcolm Johnson, ITU Deputy Secretary General, replacing Gulin Zhao, the Secretary General. Mr. Johnson is one of the most respected ICT experts in the world, and his role as ITU is now key as far as so many post-COVID issues have to be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, also to be with us. Nikhil Seth, I will say that we are close friends. Nikhil Seth is the Executive Director of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research. He has 30 years of service as an international and national civil servant and a wealth of experience in leading, supporting, and managing complex portfolios, intergovernmental process, including United Nations conferences in the economic, social, and environment fields. He served as the head of the Office of the Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, and I like that Nikhil is with us today because so many issues are related to his competence and his experience, and we wait for him to share it with us. And finally, I would like to thank Juliette, because Juliette has been accompanying us during the first sessions, now with these ICT sessions. And be sure, Juliette, that we appreciate your dedication, your time, your energy, your competence. And now I give you the floor back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monsieur Ambassador. Je vous remercie. That's the last of my French. In fact, I'm not going to inflict more of it on you, but thank you so much for that wonderful address. Let's now meet our next speaker, who is Ambassador Courtney Rattray, the recently appointed United Nations High Representative for Least Developed, Landlocked Countries and Small Island Developing States. He is also an accomplished diplomat with a distinguished career in the Jamaican Foreign Secretary. Ambassador Rattray, it's a pleasure to see you. The floor is yours. You have 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Juliet, and thank you for so effectively framing the context of our discussion this morning. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let me thank the organizers for your kind invitation. It's such a pleasure for me to join this esteemed panel, and I do need to say that it's also a signal pleasure for me to see my good friend Peter Kenny Lorea on this virtual stage together with us. I think we are all well aware that SIDS are confronted by a variety of developmental challenges, not least of which are the multidimensional vulnerabilities to external shock. Advancing economic recovery, promoting socioeconomic and climate resilience, and accelerating the pace of human capital development are some of the core priorities for small island developing states. The COVID-19 pandemic has obviously upended many of the strategic developmental plans of these countries and just aggravated their pre-existing challenges. Whereas this can be said of many other countries, the impact on SIDS is disproportionate, given their small, open, and less diversified economies. Against this backdrop, prospects for their recovery remain uncertain at best, particularly given their traditional low rates of economic growth coupled with high debt service burdens. Colleagues, in short, the reality is stark. The tourism sector of these countries continues to struggle. Access to concessional financing remains restricted. Fiscal space is also limited, impeding efforts to mount effective COVID response and relief measures. And moreover, the socioeconomic impact of the pandemic is compounded by the increasingly adverse effects of climate change and their attendant natural disasters. What we need urgently is a concerted international effort to tackle the structural vulnerabilities of SIDS. But first and foremost, more needs to be done to address the impacts of the pandemic and bolster the recovery measures that are being taken by these countries. This will require stronger international partnerships mobilized around a multifaceted recovery effort. The pandemic has also exacerbated the severe financial constraints that SIDS face. Their need for liquidity to respond to emergency short-term requirements is critical. SIDS have been exploring innovative measures to stimulate long-term sustainable investment, as well as strategies to gain access to concessional development finance. This is an important means for them to advance the structural transformation needed to reposition their economies for a sustained, resilient recovery. We need to expand eligibility to concessional financing based on a well-defined multidimensional vulnerability index. The UN system, including my office, has embarked on a process towards the potential development of a multidimensional vulnerability index for SIDS. We look forward to exploiting this tool for increased access to concessional finance based on a country's potential vulnerability to external shock. Let me say a little bit about debt because it looms large in these countries. SIDS also need sustainable debt solutions, including comprehensive debt relief, highly indebted SIDS are unlikely to achieve the levels of economic development required to achieve the goals of the Samoa Pathway and the 2030 Agenda, given their heavy debt servicing burdens. We need, therefore, to explore in practical terms initiatives related to debt suspensions and innovative debt swaps. Moreover, we need once and for all to reform the international debt architecture through sustainable debt restructuring solutions that are effective not only in dealing with Paris Club and non-Paris Club bilateral creditors, but also in dealing with private creditors, which are, I think, as many people know, a growing share of the debt of sovereign countries. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot address the economic and financial recovery in SIDS without examining the impacts of COVID-19 on the tourism and health sectors and the ripple effects on commerce, distribution, and employment, as well as on transportation, agriculture, fisheries, trade, and other sectors. These sectors can all benefit from improved information and communication technologies. The value of the internet as a critical driver of technological innovation has been made more apparent during this pandemic. It is therefore of concern that only half of the SIDS population are using the internet. This is a far cry from the experience in developed countries where 9 out of every 10 individuals use the internet. The pandemic has highlighted the urgent need for accelerated technological innovation to enable SIDS to reap the benefits associated with remote learning, telemedicine, e-commerce, and e-governance. Digital transformation requires investment in digital infrastructure, including widespread access to broadband internet and electronic devices, as well as improvement in digital skills and development of local content. One way of financing such initiatives is through public-private partnerships. These, as you know, have long been used to build and operate infrastructure projects, including in ICTs. And I think such initiatives would help to reach underserved areas, such as rural and remote islands. Strategies to mainstream digital technologies and processes in government administration, commerce, health, education, as well as in relation to disaster risk reduction and other activities are urgently needed. These strategies must be supported by improved education and training to optimize the productivity enhancing potential of digital technologies. Ensuring that accessible and quality education and lifelong learning opportunities are available to all will be essential to accelerating recovery, as well as to achieving the wider development objectives of inclusive economic growth and social development while building more resilient communities. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Rattray, thank you so much for that presentation. I'd like to ask you the following question, because look, we've seen this rapid upsurge in technologies of communication and information. Does it mean that small island states are on the fast track to defeating the developmental challenges that have really hindered their growth for decades?
Let me turn back on my mic. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
So, short answer, Juliet, not yet. I wouldn't go so far as to say that SIDS are on the fast track of defeating their developmental challenges, as you say. You know, there's a good reason why the term middle income trap has been coined. You know, the countries that are considered to be middle income represent, let me see, 5 billion people, 70% of the world's population. And these countries have found it extremely difficult to make the transition from low value added to high value added industries. So this sort of structural transformation takes time, and some of the structural gaps that need to be surmounted relate to the development of their digital societies and economies. I think digitalization can be a driver of structural transformation. My concern is that although access to the internet is now, I think it's recognized globally as a vital public service, it has yet to reach in a sort of pervasive way many persons in the global south. The figures that I have, which is pre-pandemic, just before the pandemic, 2019, is that whereas 87% of people in developed countries use the internet, that's in 2019, the figure for small island developing states is 52% on average. And within these countries, within the SIDS themselves, rural areas are disproportionately bearing the brunt, so they are not connected disproportionately. And I think this shows that most people in these countries and cities are not fully benefiting from the rapid expansion of digital technology and the opportunities that it offers. And I think this is an untenable situation. And I think the pandemic has shown us the urgent need for accelerated technological innovation. So, Juliet, I think we have a ways to go. Where we are is just not sufficient. We don't like the position that we are in now, and we really have to get closer to where the developed countries are. That is what meets with our aspirations, our developmental aspirations. And I think we can get there, but the elephant in the room is the finance piece. We have to figure that out. And as I said in my opening remarks, we need to deal effectively with the skills gap. So education and training is critical, and even language barriers. You mentioned in your opening remarks, Juliet, about Cabo Verde. That is also an inhibitor to access to technologies, because we know that many of these technologies and language platforms, it's English language that is utilized, and that kind of shuts out people like those in Cabo Verde that speak a language like Portuguese that is not widely in use around the world. So let me just leave it at that, Julia. Thank you very much for the question.
Well, thank you so much for that, Ambassador Rattray. Some really powerful points that was made in that presentation and indeed in your answer. So lots there for us to discuss as well in more detail. Everybody here, thank you so much for your participation, and also to those of our panel who had to leave us because they had to attend various meetings, etc. But the contributions were most welcome, and there are grounds for optimism. There is a willingness for people to partner up, to work together, to bridge those gaps, because we've explored the importance of technology to SID states, the differences that they can make, and there's been no running away from the intricacies of the issues that are involved. They are very, very forensic, but there is no fear in taking these on and winning, because at the end of the day, the SID states, they have skin in the game, to take that phrase from you, Ambassador Calderon. But there we must leave it. Thank you so much, and good luck going forward, and I hope to meet you again in the not too distant future. Thank you.